How did bunk beds terrorize a family and actually landed them on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries? Hi, welcome back to this podcast. And today we're going to talk about the Tallman bunk beds. So in 1987, a family living in a small town of Horicon, Wisconsin, was gripped by what may be the only case ever to be recorded thus far of haunted children's bedroom furniture. So it all starts by Alan and Debbie Tallman. And this starts because they bought a bunk bed from a secondhand shop and moved it into their home on quiet Larrabee Street. And so after that, strange things really began just they started taking off and happening immediately afterwards. And so the radio would switch on and change stations all of a sudden, which is one of the things that happened. Also, the children saw what they claimed was an ugly old woman in their bedroom at night, just haunting them. She seemed to have long black hair and even would glow like fire, like that hair would turn on and just start glowing like fire. Doors would bang open and close. A chair would rock by itself. Disembodied voices called out from empty rooms in the house. I mean, the house was going insane with all kinds of things going on. It's terrifying, not only the children at this point, but the entire family itself. Now, the Tallmans decided to bring in their pastor to try to help him out with everything that was going on in the house. And the pastor did, in fact, say that he was sure that the devil was in that home. And he began blessing the house as a means to cleanse it of whatever entity or whatever force, malignant force was in that home. But the activity continued nonetheless. It didn't even cease, not even for a second. And their son soon became so scared that he could no longer stay in the house at all. I mean, this child was getting so traumatized and so terrified. Now, frustrated, and one day, just like a father would or any father would, he walked outside of the house and he looked at the house in its entirety. Alan, the father, looked at it and said, okay, enough is enough. Opened the front door, walked inside, and said at the top of his lungs, he said, pick on me, leave my kids alone. And he was done and he was angered. The next day, though, whatever entity was inhabiting his home accepted that challenge. And Alan heard a voice from the garage say, come here. A disembodied voice that just said, come here. When he went to investigate, he saw the orange glow of fire inside the garage with red eyes staring at him through the garage windows. I mean, this stuff was getting insane, downright horrifying. And this thing was now fighting Alan back really weirdly. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's the point where I would pack my things and probably get the heck out of there. But, later, while in bed sleeping with his very frightened children, because at this point they decided to just start sleeping together because they didn't want the children to go through something horrifying on their own. And they as well had to be like on battle mode all the time in their own home. Alan actually witnessed like a fog rise out of the floor and it turned into what he said was flames with green eyes, and a voice emanated out of it, and it was started telling him, you're dead. And then, just like it started, it went out. You're dead. Imagine hearing something like that. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how terrified I would be, crapping my pants at that point. Now, a few days later, a relative of the family spent the evening at that house, and they began helping Debbie, which was the mother of the children, with the children while Alan worked late. They were skeptic of the paranormal, So the whole time they didn't believe that they were really going through this stuff. And so this relative, needless to say, became a believer by the end of that night when the horrific figure materialized in the bedroom as he was putting the children to the bed. So it was the same figure that the children claimed, this old hag-like woman with that hair, with the fire, with those like devilish red eyes. Like this same figure appeared to that relative and terrified the crap out of them. So turning them into a believer. And now it's one more person who actually witnessed, separate from the immediate family, actually witnessed what the Tallmans were saying was terrorizing them in that home. Now, at that point now, the Tallmans fled their home that night in the dead of the Wisconsin winter, as they had been so terrified by this presence. At this point, demonic, not demonic, who knows? But the truth is it was a horrifying presence just harassing them at this point. As rumors began to spread, the media and hordes of people began to flock to Larrabee Street to see this so-called haunted house. And so one notable visitor was a drunk guy with a Bible. And this guy was intent on performing an exorcism in the home, right? Instead of casting the devil out, though, and saving the town as he bragged to police officers, he was arrested for drunk driving. So all kinds of crazies began turning up to try to help the Tallmans. It just became such a phenomenon, such a huge deal, such a huge thing in the 80s. Now, the story of the haunted house in Horicon quickly took on a life of its own, growing to include blood oozing from the ceiling. I think we've heard this story before. Um, about blood oozing from walls and things like that, a hole to hell in the basement. So people were really running wild with theories, right? Oh, there's a hole to hell in the basement. There's blood oozing from the ceilings. And they even stated that a snow blower that cleared the driveway by itself of snow. Now, I don't know about you, but that one may seem a bit helpful overall. But the rest, crazy. Now, the sheriff contacted the family and met with them at the station. Many harrowing and sleepless nights had Alan and Debbie just on edge. After hearing their account of the events over the last 9 months, the sheriff, became convinced of their sincerity, became convinced that they were in fact going through something horrifying in that home, even if they weren't witnesses to it. It was a possibility. And they seemed so disturbed and so perturbed by this that it must be true. As his request, at his request, the sheriff's request, they eventually shared the details of their experience with a few select members of the press who were not really seeking to sensationalize the story any more than it had already been sensationalized locally and in the near places. But they actually promised to protect their identities because, in fact, the Tallmans were not seeking any kind of notoriety. They weren't seeking any kind of fame or anything like that with their story. That's the last thing that they wanted. They just wanted some help in any way, shape, or form that it came, and maybe a little bit of, getting their story out there to see if anybody had any knowledge of what they could actually do to get their house cleansed. As we all know, purchasing a home can be a financial burden, a huge financial burden, and getting out of that purchase of that home can also be something that some people may not afford immediately. Not too sure if that was the case with the Tallmans, but based on my research and what I was able to see, I'm assuming that that was one of the circumstances that they were going through. And so they were trying to accept any kind of assistance in trying to clear and clean the home first before thinking of anything like selling or possibly trying to get some money to just move away into a different type of home. Now, they were promised to have their identities protected, and the sheriff did actually hope that the truth would calm the growing hysteria around town. So, at the very bottom of it, the sheriff hoped that whatever help the Tallmans would get would eventually lead them to understand that no, it's not really what you think is going on. It's not really something haunting or anything like that. For the sake of not having so many people running around town and the whole craziness that this house entailed. That's what the sheriff felt. But the interest actually only increased. So people at this point didn't care how factual or how truth or if they had seen anything. They believed the Tallmans and they actually wanted to see the house even more. And as more and more this story spread, more and more people just crowded around trying to see this house. Following threats of burning the house down, he eventually decided to release the address of the vacant house to ensure a neighboring home with a sleeping family didn't get set on fire. So, what happens is that the specific address of the house wasn't being released. So, people were just going around town looking for what they thought was the Tallman house. And so some people were even threatening to burn this evil, demonic, devil-filled house down. And so the sheriff, fearing that a good, family could be, murdered by these people burning whatever random house around down, decided that it was best to just release the actual address of the Tallman home so that if anything was going to go down, might as well be in that home that at this point in time was now vacant. The Tallmans were no longer staying in the home. Now, sometime after the house was sold, because eventually they did have to sell the house, there was no actual help to cleanse it. The Unsolved Mysteries crew arrived to shoot on location with permission from the new owners of the house, not the Tallmans, but the new owners. And the episode was called Tallman's Ghost. It was filmed inside the actual house in Horicon, where the haunted events transpired. It aired on October of 1988. Reenactments of the events featured local Milwaukee actors portraying the Tallman family inside the home in the areas where the Tallman said that they had seen and had heard the things that they heard. The Tallman House was part of Unsolved Mysteries Season 1, Episode number 4, the Halloween episode, which included the story of the haunted Queen Mary. Since that episode's release on streaming platforms, the Tallman House segment has not been included. Remember, the Tallmans wanted no notoriety. They wanted to remain anonymous. They never wanted anyone to know their identities. They wanted their identities protected. And so it seems to be that that specific portion of the episode or their specific segment of the episode, including the house and all of the information about their haunting, has not been part of what Unsolved Mysteries currently streams in their episodes. So even if you were to go to season 1, episode 4 to actually look for this particular story, you wouldn't find it in that episode. It has actually been removed from that episode. But anybody who actually owns the Unsolved Mysteries DVD set, the one that had like the hauntings and things like that, you would be able to find it there. I believe it's still included in the DVD set. They didn't remove it yet, so it should be there. But anyways, Unsolved Mystery creators have stated that it was not included due to the advice from their legal team, and until the statute of limitations on that story expires, they would be able to stream it out to the public. So as of now, I think I checked about a few months ago, and I still was not able to find that particular episode of the Tallman. So if you're able to find it now, please leave a comment because I would love to go back and double check and look for it and go ahead and let everybody know that it's already out there. The Tallman House episode is only available, like I said, on that out of print because they're no longer printing the DVD set, but that out of print Unsolved Mysteries box set. And I believe it's called Ghosts. Like that's what the box set is. So if you look for it, it's Unsolved Mysteries um Ghosts, and it's a DVD set from I don't know, early 2000s, I think it's when they actually like sold that box set. The Tallman family disposed of the bunk beds in a landfill, and the house still stands on Larrabee Street with no further activity reported on it by the new owners. And that is the thing though, the new owners never ever reported anything going on in that house at all. So when the Tallmans left the house, they did in fact come back. They did remove the bunk beds that they had purchased that they thought were the cause or the root problem of the haunting, and they actually disposed of them in a landfill. And then after that, they sold the home either way. And they do not really disclose if they after taking out the bunk beds and destroying them or leaving them in the landfill, if they no longer saw anything or experienced anything. But the truth is that they sold the home, so it is a possibility that they can continue to feel unsafe, and so they rather dispose of, the bunk beds, and rather sell the house and just be done with the whole thing, the whole nightmare. But the new owners actually never reported anything out of the normal or the ordinary happening, ever in that home, and nor have any owners after them. So this is the story of the Tallman bunk beds, or the Tallman furniture, haunted furniture. And so let me know in the comments if you had heard about this story before, or if you have purchased anything in a secondhand store or in an antique store, if you love antiquing and you think the energy shifted in your home, possibly saw something, possibly experienced something. Let me know in the comments. I'm highly interested in this stuff. I would love to hear from you. Let me know the good, the bad. What do you think? Do you like the route that this little podcast is taking? And I would always be appreciative of all of your support, any like, any comment, and especially any subscription. So have a great day. Don't let anything bring you down. And let me know if you have anything haunting your life currently. Bye.